How's it? Indian Cowboy here. This is your live show for Friday, December the 9th. Hope you guys are doing well. Let's get to about 15 games or so. And anybody can watch this, anybody can join, but only YouTube Premium members can comment. And let's talk about whatever games that you guys want to talk about. We try to have this live show usually Thursday evening, but try to get it out there, but no later than Friday. So looking forward to talking about the games that you want to talk about. Go ahead and start dropping the games in here, and we'll go ahead and discuss each one of the games that you want to talk about here. I think one of the first games people wanted to talk about was I'll tell you what our premium selections are on for the week, and we can talk about any NBA tonight you want to. You can talk about any college basketball you want to, any of the football games outside of the premium selections that we have. We have 5 selections this week, so can't talk about the Browns Bengals game. Um, I don't mind talking about the total, I guess, but can't really talk about the Browns, Bengals, Giants, Eagles, or Chiefs, Broncos, Panthers, Seattle, and Niners, Bucks. Okay, those are the games that we probably can't talk about, or we can talk about any other games that you want to talk about. So, hey, Anthony, good to see you, my man. Anthony's been with us a long time. Jets versus Bills. Let's talk about Jets versus Bills here. So that is the first game to talk about. So you have the Jets versus Bills here. The Bills are obviously -10. The Jets are catching, Jets are catching 10 here. Jets beat this team 20-17. It's interesting because in that game, Buffalo was up, 14-10 at the half, and then kind of the wheels fell off. But with the Jets coming off a 22-27 loss at Minnesota, they did beat the Bears 31-10. They beat New England they lost New England 3-10. Buffalo comes off throttling New England 24-10, beating Detroit. The question here is how lightly, I can't imagine the Bills taking the Jets lightly again after they took them lightly last time, right? So it's hard to imagine that. So certainly I think the Bills are going to show up. But the question here is, the line opened up at 10 and stayed pretty much at 10. I'd hate to take the Jets off of a loss, though. And they really believe in that quarterback, and they really believe in what's going on. Mike White went 31 for 57, but he threw no touchdowns and 2 interceptions that game. And Kirk Cousins only threw for 173 yards, but 1 touchdown, and they ended up winning. So, it's the funny thing is the Jets typically don't lose back-to-back games if you looked at it. And I think the last time these two teams met, it went under 46. The final was 20-17. And the total this game comes out at around the total for this game comes out around, the line opened up around 44, dropped to about 43. The total last game was set at 46 and it went under. The Jets gave up 27 points to Minnesota. I can't imagine them giving up that many points this time. Then you have a Bills team that's going to be mad because they gave up 20 points to the Jets last time too. So my early inclination in this game is probably the under more than anything else, because I just think the Bills will try to lock down in this game. Keep in mind that the public likes the over a little bit too, but I think this game is one of those games where the Bills don't take this team serious, or they will take this team seriously. They'll lock down on defense, and the Jets come off one of their worst defensive performances so far of the year, and therefore, I like the under here. The under is 7, or the under is pretty much 8-2 in the Bills' last 10 games overall, and now they're motivated too. It makes sense to sort of take the under here. So your first lean here is going to be on the Bills, and it's going to be on the Bills and Jets under. Okay, moving on here. Hey, Al, good to see you. Good to see you, buddy. Al, I'll talk to you about the Army-Navy game in a second. Our newsletter pick was on Navy, but I'll talk to you about that game in a second. Pelicans versus Sun tonight. Hey, Tyler, good to see you. So the Pelicans versus Sun game. So you have Phoenix favored by 1.5. 16-9 versus a 16-8 team. Phoenix beat this team 124-111 last time. Total was 226 and went over. Phoenix just got beat 98-125 to Boston, lost 111-130 to Dallas. Did they really lose 3 in a row? But the Pelicans have revenge. The Pelicans have beaten Oklahoma City, Toronto, San Antonio, Denver, and Detroit. So they're rolling right now too. As far as the injury side of things, Ingram is out indefinitely. But pretty much the Suns are now kind of healthy. outside of Ingram, New Orleans has a lot of depth. Phoenix, they've got Paul back. They had Booker, Craig, Bridges, Ayton, and they got routed in the last game. It was ugly. And Boston kind of came in and just destroyed them, right? And you have New Orleans here, who didn't play well in their last game against Detroit, but they ended up winning that game. But they still have Valanciunas and Murphy and Williams and McCollum and gang. But I just think you have to think the Suns are going to come out motivated. I know the Pelicans have revenge, but it's hard to imagine for me. It's hard for me to imagine. It's definitely hard for me to imagine to think that you're going to have a Suns team that's looking to lose 3 in a row. That's hard for me to imagine. Especially, I know the Pelicans have revenge, but I think what makes sense here is to take the Suns coming off back-to-back losses, especially one of the most embarrassing losses of the year. And I think Ingram makes a huge difference. The fact that he's not there does hurt them. The Suns are 7-1 ATS coming off a straight-up loss. Moving on here. As far as the Army-Navy game is concerned, my original lean in that game was Navy. You have a 4-17 versus a 5-16, but I don't think the straight-up wins really matter. Navy beat this team 17-13 last time. The total was 35. I think the difference here is Navy beat UCF as a 14.5-point dog. They nearly beat Notre Dame, only lost by 3. They lost to Cincinnati by 10. They covered as 18.5-point dogs. They are getting better. They did pretty well against ECU and beat them outright. They beat Tulsa early this year. They covered against SMU. Navy has been consistent throughout. And I know Army beat Massachusetts, but they were a 19.5-point favorite. Army's Massachusetts isn't good. They beat Connecticut. They've covered 5 in a row, lost to Troy, Air Force, and Louisiana Monroe. But I think the difference in this game is the fact that Navy is, top 10 in offense and rushing. They're top 10 in rush defense. They're top 45 in total overall defense. And I think that matters. And then you have Army coming in, who's a pretty good defensive team, top 55, but they are top 120 in rush defense. They are not a good rush defense team. And I think Navy does a better job on rush defense than Army does. And I think that's the difference here. So I lean on Navy in this game. And note that the midshipmen so far are 5-0 ATS coming off a bye week. So lean is on, lean is on Navy. So, hey, Roberto, good to see you, my man. So that is your third lean. Let me make sure I write these down here. So far, your lean number 1 was on the Bills, and I'll recap this at the end. Was on the Bills, and I go into detail in every single one prior to this. So if you want to listen to the podcast, but the Bills and Jets under was the first lean, right? And lean number 2 was on the Phoenix Suns tonight. Lean number 3 was on Navy. And we continue. Okay. Let me put this here. All Saturday, NFL Sunday. All right, moving on. Next game. New York Rangers versus Colorado in the NHL. Thank you for the picks, my friend. Yeah, anytime, Anthony. So the Rangers versus Colorado in hockey, we don't have a hockey premium selection tonight, but so I can talk to you about this game. So you have a Rangers team that rolls in as pretty heavy favorites, right? And both these teams are, opened up at 6 on the total and went to 5.5. Colorado beat this team the last 4 times they played. So that's going to motivate the Rangers coming in. They beat Vegas. They beat St. Louis. They played pretty well. Colorado comes into this game having lost to Boston, Philly, and Boston again. And Buffalo, and they've lost the last 3, and they've been getting throttled pretty hard. When they're a favorite, they lost as minus 183 favorites. They were lost as dogs to Boston both times. You have a Rangers team that's very good. And I think the difference here is the fact that the Rangers have revenge, the fact that Colorado is just struggling right now and they haven't found their mojo. I like the fact that this game is listed at 6 and went down to 5.5. The Rangers have been focused throughout lately. They are 4-1 on the road of late. And I think the New York Rangers will probably get it done today. Moving on here. Roberto, again, welcome. How's it, Matthew? Good to see you. Kendrick, game number 5 here. Mavericks versus the Bucks. So, and of course, our NBA game today is between Atlanta and Brooklyn. But as far as the Mavericks and the Bucks here, the Bucks are favored by 1.5. It just depends on who's going to suit up here for both teams, right? Sometimes, if you look at the injury report, Wes Matthews is out for Milwaukee, but Dallas is fully healthy coming into this game. Dallas always shows up against good teams, and they don't show up against the bad teams. That's why Dallas is a little irritable. But Milwaukee beat this team by 12 last time on November 27th. That's hard to ignore that. That game was totaled at 216 and went way over. So I do think they're going to play better defense. Milwaukee beat Sacramento 126 to 113. They beat Orlando, they beat Charlotte, they beat New York, Dallas recently, just 5 games ago. And then Dallas comes into this game beating Denver and Phoenix and New York, looking pretty good. So this is interesting because the last time this game was set, it was settled at 216 and a half, and the game went way over. And now this game is settled at around 224, and people sort of like the under in this game. Not the under, I'm sorry. People still like the over, I think 60 to 40. So if you look at more stuff here, you'll notice how the game opened up at Milwaukee -1, then it kind of went in favor of Dallas. I think you have to think that Dallas shows up here, but I hate going against Giannis. But it's hard for me to imagine that Dallas gets beat by this team within the last 2 weeks twice. It's hard for me to imagine that. And it's not like Milwaukee doesn't lose. They did lose to the Bulls. They lost to Philadelphia. They lost to the Lakers. They faced 3 teams like Charlotte, meh, Orlando, meh. And Sacramento was in that game against Milwaukee. Don't forget, Milwaukee won by 13, but Sacramento was only down by 3 going into the fourth quarter. So I got to go with Dallas here. I think Dallas hangs in, and I think Dallas will be ready for this game, and they'll be rocking and rolling, and I think the Mavericks probably win. So I'm not even going to mess with the total, and I'm going to take Dallas. Moving on here. Hey, Tyler, Arizona versus Boston in hockey. So as far as Arizona and Boston, and remember, and I'll recap for you for later at the end of the day, but right now we're on game number 1 is Bills Jets under. Game number 2, Phoenix Suns. Game number 3, Navy. That was our lean. Game number 4, Rangers, New York Rangers. Game number 5, Mavericks. So as far as Arizona and Boston, I mean, Boston is such a massive, massive favorite, -335. They've been phenomenal. They beat this team 6-3 early this year on a total of 6. So if Arizona has any chance, they have to step up on defense. Boston held Colorado to no goals in their last game after losing to Vegas, but they had beaten Colorado prior to that 4-5-1 and 3-1, and they'd won so many games in a row. You have an Arizona team that just lost 2-8 to Edmonton, and then you see a line of 6 open up right away again. It kind of makes me think that this game probably goes under because the only way Arizona hangs tough is through their defense. Remember, they were plus 280 dog against Calgary. The game went to 3-2. Or the time they were plus 298 dogs to Carolina. The game was 4-0. So I think what I like here in this game, I don't like the side either way. You can't take Arizona and you can't take Boston on such juice. But I do like the under. I mean, the under at the end of the day is 6-0 for the Coyotes whenever they face teams with a winning record. So I like Arizona and Boston under in the NHL. Okay, moving on here. The next game. Hey, Chops, good to see you. Lakers versus Sixers. No, Devil, you're not late at all. Just re-listen to the podcast. Feel free to re-listen to the podcast. I can't talk to you about the Browns game anyway. That's one of our top selections. But hit me up on any one of the other games. It's one of our football selections, 5 football selections for the week. But as far as the Lakers and the Sixers are concerned, and I'll recap this at the end. What are all of our leans were. We usually go through about 10 games. So the Lakers and Sixers, I think the Lakers are playing really well right now. The total sits around 228. Public likes the under a little bit. But so when you delve into this game, the Lakers have lost back-to-back games. It's unlikely they lose 3 in a row. Lost to Cleveland and Toronto. But, of course, who's suiting up for the Lakers, right? Anthony Davis is listed as probable. LeBron James is listed as probable. Patrick Beverley is listed as probable. And then you have a Philly team that lost to Houston, so they're going to be motivated. Lost to Memphis, lost to Cleveland. But as long as Anthony Davis plays, you cannot get me off the Lakers. You just can't. I think they're a team that's going to make some moves near the end. They're 10-14. It looks like they're probably going to go to the playoffs. I actually think the Lakers will hang tough today. And I know the line bumped up to 5 points already, but as long as as long as Anthony Davis plays, you can't get me off him. And I do think this game goes under because if the Lakers are going to win, it's not going to be through their defense. I mean, they just gave up 126 points to Toronto. They gave up 129 to Milwaukee. So if you want the safer side, I would take the over if that's what you want to do. But I would lean on the Lakers and I would lean on the over. If I had to pick something, I'd probably take the over first, but I'd lean on the Lakers too. Okay. Moving on here. Hey, Devil, how about the Wolves game in the NBA? Sure. So the Wolves game, you have uh, Minnesota's only a plus 1.5 dog. Carl Anthony Towns' health is always what's in question there. Total opened up at 236.5, dropped down to 235. Um, Very high total. And the funny thing is, if you take a look at what the public likes, they like the under. It's about even, but they prefer the under. Minnesota's a tricky team. So Minnesota beat Indiana, by 6. They lost to Oklahoma City, but they beat Memphis when they realized that Cat went down. And Cat's going to be down until mid-January, by the way. And Utah it won't have Sexton again, and Conley's listed as probable in this game, and Markkanen is listed with an illness too, so he won't play. But then you have the Jazz coming in with Denver on deck here. They beat Golden State, but how do they handle? How do you beat Golden State and then come back as a plus 1.5 or a minus 1.5 favorite only to Minnesota without Cat? That's what's odd about this game. But what I'll tell you is that you have a Utah team that still has Beasley and Clarkson and Sexton, but Sexton might not play today, right? So they had 17 turnovers that game. But they were blown out. I mean, they were up by double digits heading into the fourth quarter on this Golden State team. I like the over here. I think, if Sexton is really going to be out until for another week or so, I think you have Minnesota that's probably going to be an active dog here and probably going to send this game over. Minnesota put up 121 against Indiana and 128 against Oklahoma City. They're not really playing that much defense. They still got shooters. Gobert is going back to Utah, right? 16 points for him. Edwards, step it up, and Russell, McDaniels, and Anderson. I actually think Minnesota can win this game. I actually like Minnesota here for this game, and I like the over in this game. But if I had to take a side, I'm going to fade Utah, and I'm going with Minnesota Timberwolves as the lean. I'm not even going to mess with the total there. Okay. Moving on here. Yeah, I agree, Rob. Hopefully we'll get it going in the NBA today. I really hope so. So, hello, I see. Let's see. What am I? All good. I see. How about Wolves in the NBA? Let's see here. Thank you for the winners. How about the San Jose Bowl game? Maybe. Sure. So, for the San Jose Bowl game, let's see here. And by the way, I'll recap. Where we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is the 9th game we're going to talk about here. And this is a recorded podcast, so you can re-listen to it at any time. By the way, any one of these bowl games can change. Okay. I'll just let you know that right now. But as of Friday, today, as of past 6 Eastern, this is what my thought is right now, but it could change. But I'll tell you as much information as I can. So San Jose State comes in having beaten Hawaii, lost to Utah State, lost to San Diego State. They have not covered in 6 straight games. Eastern Michigan rolled, Central Michigan, Kent, Akron. They've won 4 out of the last 5. You have no recent meetings between these two teams. Eastern Michigan's strength is, of course, they're top 55 in defense. They have an okay offense, but you have a San Jose State team that rolls in who's top 25 in defense, who's very good on offense. They're top 40 in passing yards. Now, I think that's probably the difference here in this game. The fact that San Jose, I think they played in a tougher conference too. I mean, San Jose State played in a tough conference. The line has kind of been moving away from them. People won't take Eastern Michigan, but, San Jose State played, they played some. Yeah, it's a team that had played Auburn and only lost by 8, played Western Michigan, played Wyoming, played UNLV, beat them all, beat Colorado State. And, I think this is a game that probably favors them. I like the fact that this, and nothing to take away from Eastern Michigan, but they're sort of hit or miss all the time. And I'm going to go with San Jose State. I think they're probably the better team here. Note that San Jose State, at the end of the day, they are 16-6 ATS against teams with a winning record. Okay, moving on here. Hey, Cliff, good to see you. Rob had a game. Sorry, Rob. Rob, that Dolphins Chargers game. Yeah, I don't have a play on it, so let's talk about that game. So the Dolphins Chargers game. I think this might be one of the last games we talk about. Might do one more. I think I saw a Vanderbilt Auburn game or something like that. But the Dolphins are 8-4, and the Chargers 6-6. The Chargers got a gift with the Raiders losing their last game. Miami lost 17-33 to San Francisco, but they had beaten Houston and Cleveland and Chicago and Detroit, a couple of sub 500 teams, pretty nicely. They do have the Bills on deck here. The Chargers beat Arizona, but they barely lost to the Chiefs and barely lost to the Niners in Vegas. it seems like a lot of people are going to be on these on Miami here minus the points. But I think they should be on Miami. I mean, why wouldn't they be, right? This is a team that coming off a loss. Why wouldn't be able to do well here? And the total opened up pretty high at 53. So I think the safer take here is the over, because I think Miami's going to score a lot more than 17 points. And I think the Chargers coming in this game, it could be an active dog, and they only put up 20 points against Vegas anyway, and they didn't look that great. So I think that you have two frustrated teams, which probably is going to lead to an over in this game. And I would say that the over is 4-0 for the Dolphins in their last four road games. So, and the Chargers are also 4-0 to the over whenever they face teams with a winning record. So I would say Miami and the LA Chargers over. That might be one of our free plays later on in the week. Let me knock that down here. Yeah, I might actually give maybe on Saturday. All right, I think that's almost it. I will try to, Cliff. I'll try to, and be sure to like this video if you get a chance. If you enjoy the content, Cliff. Let me get to that Vanderbilt game for you before I close out here. That goes off. This total's at 137.5. It's the first thing that I saw when I saw the total kind of low. So the question is, how much can Grambling score? That's what it's going to come down to. And Grambling, put up 40. They lost to Grand Canyon 48-81. And Grand Canyon's, top 80 defense, and Vanderbilt's even better than that. And Vanderbilt just beat Pittsburgh with that NC State on deck, and they, Grambling's not a good defense. I'm sorry, Grambling is a good defense, but they're terrible offense. Grambling beat Colorado earlier this year, 83-74, and they come off nice wins against Dartmouth and Incarnate. Grambling's actually got a pretty decent defense. So, can this game could be a drag out game for this team. And then if you look at how this line opened up here, it opened up at 138.5, and then it took a quick hit down to 137. But I think this is a game that Grambling hangs tough. And I know it's hard to imagine. You never know with these ugly duckling dogs. But with Vandy having NC State on deck, with the fact that Grambling, I know they got blown out by Arizona State and Grand Canyon. I get it, but they did beat Colorado, and they're able to play decent defense. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're able to hang that. If I had to take a side, probably Grambling, even though it's kind of scary to do it. I actually think this game probably goes under 2. And there you go. That is your full recap here. So let me recap everything for you, okay? Game number 1, Bills Jets under. Game number 2, Phoenix Suns. Game number 3, Navy. Game number 4, the New York Rangers. Game number 5, what did I have? The Mavericks. Game number 6, Arizona, Baltimore. Arizona and Boston and hockey under. Game number 7 is the Lakers over. Lakers and Sixers over. Game number 7 is Minnesota Timberwolves. Game number 8 is San Jose State in college football. Game number 9 is Miami and the LA Chargers. Dolphins Chargers over. And game number 11 is Grambling. Okay. Let me tidy up here. Hi, Cabo. What do you think about the Indiana game in the NBA over Washington? Let me see. Early take is on the over in the Indiana-Washington game. Okay. Anytime, Anthony. Anytime. Good. I'm glad it helped, Cliff. Anytime Uwatai, Malawota. That's such a cool name. Cabot, what about the Indiana Pacers over Washington? -4.5. Yeah, William, I like the over in that game. Okay. Cabot, what about the Indiana game? The NBA, don't sign me off. Let me know. Yeah, no, William, I like the over in that game. I don't like a side because I think Washington is actually playing quite well right now. So I don't like the side. Plus the option of Washington being an active dog, I think could happen too. And if you take a look at that game, what you can see is that the last time these two teams played, it went over 228. It was like 127 and 117. But if I had to take a side, I mean, Washington is playing hard. I mean, they're playing hard. They still have, I know they don't have Beal, but they still got Porzingis and Kuzma and Morris and Kispert and Barton. Which one do I like more between the over and the side? I hate the fact that Indiana comes off a loss. and Barton's out too, and Porzingis is listed as probable. Let's see here. It's either got to be Washington or the over. Okay. It's either got to be Washington or the over. And the only problem with taking the over is that Washington gave up 127 points to this team last time. And it's either Washington or the over. I'd probably not even mess with the total. I'd probably just take Washington plus the 4. Okay. Thank you, guys. Victor, good to see you, my man. William, good to see you. Alan, good to see you again. And I hope you guys enjoyed the content. We stayed underneath the 30 minutes that we promised, somewhere between 25 and 30 minutes. And I hope you guys are doing great. And I'll see you on the flip side. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.